Rolf Harris. You probably need to be an Australian of a particular generation, but damn this guy. It's kind of our version of Bill Cosby, in that it was absolutely shocking and meant a lot of stuff we identified with became tainted. Edit Cosby. In the UK, a good parallel example would be Jimmy Savile. When he was alive, he was beloved. He had a TV show that made people's dreams come true, and he raised a huge amount of money for charity. He was even knighted by the Queen. Then after his death, it was discovered that he was one of the most prolific sexual predators the world has ever known. And it wasn't just living people he abused, he was a necrophiliac as well. Although all this was discovered after his death, and he got away with it, there were lots of things named after him that were quickly renamed, and his headstone was removed and destroyed. Judd Fogel, the subway guy. The things discovered about him are quite disturbing. Prison is an appropriate place for him. He was invited to the premiere of the second Avengers movie, and less than a month later he was in jail. Oscar Pistorius, for example, had a rather fast transition from Paralympic champion and role model to spouse killer. This is the answer for me, because it happened so fast. I'd never heard of the dude. Then he was this hero that every publication was fawning over. Then like the next summer he's murdered his wife. The whiplash was huge. Judd Fogel turns out to be a monster, but it's not like he was beloved or anything. Pistorius truly went from unknown to Adonis in the pantheon to a killer. O.J. Simpson. Not a Jew. Bill Cosby. It is hard to think of a contemporary example who fell further from a great height than America's dad. I haven't seen him mentioned here, but US Congressman Gary Condit. He was considered one of the favorites for the Democratic presidential nomination in 2000, but a woman on his staff, Chandra Levy, went missing. In the investigation, it turned out that he was being looked at as a person of interest because he had been having an extramarital affair with the woman, who later turned up dead, having been murdered by someone unrelated. The affair mixed with the investigation, where he had initially lied about being involved with her, essentially destroyed his political career. You forgot the best part. In the summer of 2001, every news outlet was wall-to-wall coverage of the Condit scandal. Then something happened 11 days into September 2001, and every single news outlet just sorta forgot about Condit. There is one man in America who thanks the Lord every day for 9/11, and that's Gary Condit. Aaron Hernandez. Played tight end for the New England Patriots. Fresh off a new contract. Killed his friend. Found guilty, then took his own life during the appeal. He's also literally the dumbest criminal ever to live. Stuck his chewing gum with his DNA in the spent shell casing. It goes on and on. Len Bias. He was compared to Michael Jordan and was drafted by the Boston Celtics on June 17, 1986. Went to Boston on June 18 to sign his draft deal and signed a $1.6 million product endorsement deal with Reebok. Came home and celebrated his achievements by snorting cocaine and dying of an overdose the next day. Growing up in a Boston suburb in the 80s, this was drilled into us during the war on drugs. Kevin Spacey. A few years before his revelations, I heard through the gay grapevine, about him groping a waiter and saying I know what I want. So I wasn't surprised at the accusations, just that it took so long to get out. Anne Boleyn. Went from Queen of England to losing her head in 3 years. Speaking of tutors, Lady Jane Grey was Queen of England for 9 days, then was imprisoned for a few months before being beheaded. John Landis. In the late 70s and early 80s his career as a director was really taking off. Animal House, The Blues Brothers and An American Werewolf in London were back-to-back hits that are all still beloved to this day. Then came the Twilight Zone movie. The film included a helicopter escape scene that Landis insisted on shooting as realistically as possible. The helicopter crashed, killing 3 actors, 2 of whom were child actors. Landis was charged with manslaughter, although he was ultimately acquitted. His friendship with Steven Spielberg was over, and his career never fully recovered. It was pretty bad, but his career after Twilight Zone includes the Three Amigos Coming to America, and plenty of other films with big stars that were high profile at the time. Things started burning out with a series of duds in the 90s, but that was long after the Twilight Zone scandal. Chris Benoit. What happened was quickest, hardest, and most destructive. First, Benoit strangled Nancy. The next day, he smothered Daniel with a pillow, having administered Xanax to him. Then, a day after that, Benoit went downstairs to his home gym, tied a cable around his neck and committed suicide. Over a 3-day period, Benoit went from a famous wrestler to murder-suicide. Always got a highlight that he had bad CTE from all the abuse he took in the ring. Same disease ended up getting Junior So to kill himself, in a way that allowed his brain to be studied later. Entertainment moguls are profiting off of the suffering of their employees and the families. Edit. I have to add that I think he still bears the blame for his own actions. What I'm trying to say is that there are whole industries that thrive off of unsafe and exploitative conditions. CeeLo Green went from asterisk the voice to people who have really been raped. Remember in 6 months. Drugged a woman and raped her. Admitted he had sex with her while unconscious, but said that meant she wasn't raped as she was out cold and didn't remember it, so how could it be rape? After Seinfeld, Michael Richards destroyed his career with that infamous stand-up appearance where he was trying to do edgy comedy like Sam Kinison and just ended up yelling the N-word over and over. Man, Kramer is having a bad set. Dave Chappelle. Robin Thicke went from a decade-defining hit to selling 55 copies of his Creep album in Australia in no time at all. He just asterisk semed asterisk like a doucher bag. Rarely do you see a star so broadly, viscerally reviled immediately upon making it to the top. Armie Hammer. Yeah, what a bizarre tale. Lance Armstrong. I had to scroll so far to find Mr. Livestrong bracelet. I thought everyone had forgotten how he beat cancer, won an all-time record 7 Tour de France races, became America's star, and then revealed to Oprah that he was on performance enhancers. Everyone acted shocked for some reason, like Sosa, Maguire, and Bonzwanati. Matt Lauer. When I was a child actor in the New England RE in the early 80s, there was a show called PM or Evening Magazine, and Lorna was the host of the Providence edition, and we were all told to stay as far away from him as possible because he wasn't a nice man. I would say Tonya Harding. She wasn't at a pinnacle, but she sure fell. I remember a few years after the whole fiasco, there were these videos you could rent or buy that were titled like World's Craziest Police Chases or something along those lines. Anyway, at the end of one that I watched was Tonya Harding's wedding night sex tape. And it was so effing sad. Like they didn't even get the room with the nice jacuzzi tub at their 2-star hotel. She was being filmed naked in one of those super shitty shallow bathtubs at hotels on her wedding night. I'm not saying what she did was okay, because it wasn't, but I felt so bad for her and realized she probably had a really shitty life before all the Olympic stuff. Amanda Bynes. Her tragic struggles with mental health sent her on a spiral of DUIs and other arrests for destroying property, throwing her bong out of a hotel window, and allegedly pouring gasoline on her dog. Her Twitter tirades including Drake and topless photos, walking around LA nude. I mean, there was a lot. And everyone just kind of tuned in for the public destruction of her life. It's really sad. This one bugs me so much. She was so fun to watch, quirky and funny. Sad for sure. Sia was all the way up in the sky when her own film shot her down. That was a nasty landing. What happened with Sia? Icarus. Careful, Icarus. Danny Masterson. He didn't surprise me much. Always got a weird vibe from him, and when I learned he was a Scientologist, I thought that was it. But hearing he was a rapist and protected by his cult was not a big stretch. Jason Russell, the Connie 2012 guy, became one of the largest viral campaigns ever at the time. The thing was huge and international, and this guy was everywhere. Kids at least thought this guy was going to save the children of Africa single-handedly with the stickers we were putting everywhere. Then, boom, mental breakdown, jerking it in the street. Disappeared out of the public eye forever. Don't forget South Park giving us the very catchy song Naked and Jackin' It in San Diego. Milli Vanilli. Milli Vanilli looking at all those TikTok lip sync videos like Jerry Springer was legitimately a rising star in the Democratic Party, elected mayor of Cincinnati in his early 30s, and some viewed him as the spiritual successor of RFK in progressive politics. Until his career was derailed by a prostitution scandal. He was caught because he paid for it with a personal check. Till that, Jerry Springer had a political career. Rudy Giuliani went from everyone's mayor for being the mayor of New York City during 9/11 to a joke. From being the guy that almost single-handedly destroyed the New York mob, to sweating hair dye on national TV. What the heck happened? I mentioned this in a similar thread, but during the 2012 Senate race in Missouri, Todd Akin was doing well, and had a good shot at winning. Until he said that the human body can detect and terminate a pregnancy from legitimate rape. That one statement of his was not only front page news for like a week, even being called out by no less than then President Barack Obama, but torpedoed his entire political career in one fell swoop, and made him a laughingstock for all times. Claire McCaskill, his Democratic opponent, actually did brilliantly by putting out advertising that highlighted this in the general campaign to get people to vote against him, but also earlier in the primary to get him on the general election ticket. Honorable mention to Howard Dean for effectively losing his party's nomination over a stump speech that would look tame by today's standards. He never stood a chance. He was excited about taking third place in Iowa with that speech. People act like he was on the fast track to the nomination. Ian Watkins, the lead singer of the Lost Prophets, not the guy from Steps, who got S*** for sharing the same name. I grew up in South Wales and loved their music at the time. https://n.m/wiki/Ian_Watkins_Lost Prophets_singer. Sexual assault of *BABIES**. JFC. Harvey Weinstein. He came tumbling down. Some say he was the most powerful man in Hollywood prior to his fall from grace. But wasn't he pretty much always known to be somewhat slimy? I seem to recall a few well-established actresses who simply refused to work with him even before his actions were widely known.